Ranganathan, you might recall that, and you can correct me here, I think it was in the early 2000s, when a lot of data on big tobacco, studies that big tobacco in fact had conducted, showing that their product is lethal, causes cancer, heart disease, was suppressed. Now, these documents that have appeared, I see a very, very strong link. And I want to ask you, is Facebook today culpable of that kind of fraud, manipulation, suppression?
That's a very interesting analogy and a thought, Rahul, but may I please disagree, because according to me, bringing in the analogy of the tobacco companies isn't quite appropriate here. Because Facebook, of course, started as a platform, and all the social media companies started as a platform. And according to me, the only regulation that should be imposed on a platform is that there should be no regulation. It should be totally unregulated. The government should not regulate it, and the companies themselves should not regulate it. And I'll explain to you why. Because, a bad book or a good book or a pornographic book, it's not the paper's fault on which it is printed. It's as simple as that. So, platform is there for a purpose. It is a purpose for interaction. Now, you may hate the person you're interacting with, you may hate what you read on it, but it's not the platform's fault. The purpose of a platform is to bring it to you. You may ignore it or you may use it. A social media platform cannot censor, ban, adjudicate, publish, alter, or editorialize. I have no issues when it remains a platform, i.e., does not control what trains come and go. But unfortunately, that is why we need the government regulation to make sure these platforms are not regulated by the platform companies themselves, because that's not the case anymore. These platforms heavily censor what they please, ban what they don't like, and these are all subjective decisions based on ideology and political preferences. Any social media platform operating in India should have just one rule, quote, anything you post here is subject to Indian laws and can be acted upon never by us, but by Indian courts, unquote. Anything more, Rahul, is an instrument of control and prone to bias. It is that simple. Look, our constitution doesn't guarantee absolute freedom of expression. I deplore that, but that's a fact. It has spawned laws that are draconian and subjective and tailor-made for misuse. But in the scenario that a platform doesn't conform to absolute freedom of expression, the monopoly of bias in a democracy should rest with the constitution, not the platform. I'd much rather a judge ban me than a platform. So Facebook or Twitter or any other Instagram or social media company cannot decide or editorialize. They should be just platforms. In fact, Rahul, they were all platforms initially when they sucked in consumers. Once they trapped consumers, they kept on changing and adding terms and rules, and now they are a law unto themselves.
The analogy is quite valid. I'll tell you why, because there are real consequences. Let me just quote again what Hogan said, and I would like your remarks as a follow-up to this. Hogan said that according to internal documents, Zuckerberg had given soft options to make the Facebook platform less twitchy and viral in countries prone to violence, but declined to take them because it might affect meaningful social interactions, or MSI. These are terms that were used. She said, we have a few choice documents that contain notes from briefings with Mark Zuckerberg, where he chose metrics defined by Facebook like meaningful social interactions over changes that would have significantly decreased misinformation, hate speech and other inciting content, unquote. So should platforms such as this, I mean, look, as a television platform, I'm subject to all sorts of regulation, also laws. So is the print media. But there are certain sectors, like this particular sector, which engages and uses its platform, knowing fully well what might come of it, and justifies it as meaningful social interactions. What is meaningful about spreading hate, misinformation that could lead to rioting, social divisions, destruction of the self-esteem of teenage girls, and all sorts of other things?
Yeah, Rahul, can I please answer that?
Yeah, of course. The question is for you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So that's a very interesting question, and let me answer it in two parts. Number one, let me give you an example. Let's say I tweet, the earth was formed in 6 days and the man created from black mud. Now, science tells us that this is a total lie. So, should Twitter flag it as fake and withhold my tweet? But these are verses from the Holy Book, 754:1526. What if the fact checker adjudicating on my tweets was deeply religious and believed my tweets to be true? Would he disregard science and pass on my tweets? Or what if he was an atheist or a scientist like me? Would he flag my tweet and ask for it to be detected? Bottom line is, any platform enabling a discourse cannot play God or atheist, because then it becomes an echo chamber. And if it does, that's where the diversity ends, mutation stall, mixing is prevented, and evolution shut down. Point number two, you talked about spreading hate. Now, of course, that is subjective. But I ask you again, let us take any religious book. Now, obviously, there is a lot of hate being spread through religious book, but is it the fault of the printing press, or is it the fault of the paper? That is the question we need to ask. These platforms need to be regulated only to the extent that they need to be enforced, that you will not have any regulation.